Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Danielle, aka Stitcherista here on YouTube, and today is a true crime story time. I want you guys to get used to seeing me face to face doing these because I sat here, the arbitration, brain scrambled, fried, body hurting from being in the chair so much, my computer chair. For the time being, it will just be easier for me to record these face to face and, chat with you and all of that. My stitching, you'll have to see in my cross stitch vlog, although I will, because I put that up once a week. I put that up on Saturdays. But I can show you, I pulled this out again. This is Carolyn Manning's Phoenix. I'm going to start working on that. And I explained why in my cross stitch vlog that will go up on Saturday. But here is what the picture looks like. Yes, indeedy. And yeah. So yeah, we have off from the arbitration today and tomorrow. Well, I'm recording this on Thursday. I'm going to put this up on Friday. Thursday, Friday, and then all next week. And I'm going to the cross stitch retreat, or, a retreat, next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I will do a vlog in my room. And yeah. So my brain, I'm telling you this, I looked ahead at the schedule. We don't have it next week, and then we have it 3 days the 1 week. And then in October, we don't have it too much. I want to say we have it only like 6 days. That's not a lot. But then November and December, we have it like 3 weeks. And then December, we have it 3 weeks. And I'm just like, I have to find myself a different way of doing everything I do in the course of a day. Because I'm constantly sitting in my chair being behind everybody and all that. And I have to figure out a different way of the extra tasks I do. I'm going to figure it out. Or I just have to make myself set a timer and get up from my chair every 30 minutes for 5 minutes or something. Because what's happening is I'm sitting so long, and I just realized my chair is crooked. I'm sitting so long that my body is hurting. Yeah, even though I have a good chair. But okay. So today's is a cold case that was solved, and it is called Queen of Hearts. It was a unique idea, first used by the U.S. military during the Iraq conflict. Packs of playing cards were issued to the troops, each of them featuring a picture of a wanted Iraqi war criminal. Really? Saddam Hussein was the ace of spades, while his ministers, generals, and top aides appeared in a hierarchical structure distributed over the 4 suits. The idea was to keep their faces at the top of your mind, and it was wildly successful. All but 4 of the individuals featured in that original 52-card deck were either killed or captured. Wow! That's impressive. Okay. In 2005, law enforcement officials in Florida were inspired by this idea and decided to put it to a different use. The playing cards they commissioned featured the faces of homicide victims and missing persons. Thousands of these packs were manufactured, then distributed to prisons across the state, where they were sold for $1.75 a deck. The front of each card contained a photograph, and the back contained a brief description of the crime. The idea was to jog the memory of anyone who might know anything about the case, and it worked. Yeah, I'm guessing it would. That's ingenious. That really, really is a good idea. Soon tips were pouring in, many of them useless, but others that led to arrests and convictions. In fact, the scheme was so successful that other states began to take notice. I'm sure they did. Soon, these unique playing cards were showing up in correctional facilities across the nation, In 2008, the state of Washington piloted the scheme, and in March 2010, someone called in a tip on the Queen of Hearts, a young homicide victim named Susan Schwartz. Susan Schwartz was just 24 years old when she was shot to death in her Linwood, Washington home on October 22nd, 1979. Holy hell! Yeah, 1979 to 2010, that is definitely a cold case. The young woman had been dragged... No. She had been killed by an intruder who had dragged her from her shower, tied her hands, and then executed her with 2 bullets to the head. Why? My first question for all this stuff is why? The killer then ransacked the apartment, leaving with several items. But the crime made little sense to investigators. Burglars are seldom violent unless confronted. In this case, the victim was restrained, so why kill her? And Washington is a death penalty state, so why risk it? I guess we're going to find out, though. So, to investigators, there were only 2 possible answers to these questions. The first was that Susan knew her killer and had been murdered to prevent her from identifying him. The second was that the burglary was a ruse devised to mask the real motive. Perhaps the killer had harbored some personal grudge against Susan. This would certainly fit the callous nature of the execution. The problem was in finding anyone who had harbored animosity towards Susan. Those who knew her described her as a caring and affable person, well liked by everyone. When you read these stories and when you read statistics, it says like a large percentage of crimes are committed by people that you know. It is, I want to say, fairly rare, or just a low percentage of just a random person committing a crime. Okay. To investigators, there were only 2 possible answers to these questions. The first was that Susan... I just read that. Well, okay, so perhaps, though, that everyone didn't like Susan. As detectives began delving into her background, they identified one individual who might have meant her harm. His name was Gregory Johnson. He was 26 years old, and he was married to a former high school classmate of Susan. Johnson was no stranger to law enforcement. He was an ex-con with a long record for robbery, drugs, and crimes of violence, including domestic abuse against his wife. A lovely stand-up citizen. Yeah. It appeared that Susan had recently counseled her old school friend to take refuge at a shelter for battered women. So there's why he's salty. Yeah. She had then assisted the woman in making a move to Minnesota with her 2-year-old son. Johnson had apparently been furious when he found out. Oh, shit. My favorite flavor of Gatorade Zero is orange. Yeah. Unfortunately, the much-abused Mrs. Johnson still appeared to harbor feelings for her violent husband. Within months, she was back in Washington and talking about a reconciliation. During this visit, she stayed at Susan's house, and Susan counseled her against patching things up with her ex. The woman had apparently taken this advice and returned to Minnesota. Oh. Just a few weeks later, Susan would be dead. He would be suspect, right? So Gregory had been suspect number 1 during the initial inquiry, and questioned by detectives, he claimed that he had been fishing in Everett with his brother at the time Susan was killed. That alibi was never verified, though, to the satisfaction of investigators. In fact, they remained so convinced that Johnson was their man that they decided to have another crack at him in 1986, so about 6 years later, while he was serving time for robbery. On this occasion, Johnson had a different story to tell. He now claimed he had dropped his brother and another man at Susan's house on the day she was killed. They were only meant to rob the place, but something went wrong. Later, according to Johnson, his brother admitted to him that he had shot Susan. The police did not believe a word of it. Unfortunately, they had nothing to back up their suspicions. So her case would remain cold and apparently unsolvable until 2010. So they just let him go, even though he said, oh yeah, we went there to rob her. What? That was when an inmate looked down at his poker hand and saw a pretty young woman with red hair looking back at him, and flipping the card over, he started reading the case details printed on the back. Then he stopped in mid-sentence and started reading again because he had heard this story before. Ooh. It had been told to him by one of his fellow cons. The card had a hotline number printed on the back. As soon as it was convenient to do so, the inmate called it. The tip-off was a break, and an important one, but it was by no means a case closer. I have something on my glasses. Only two things would achieve that end: a confession or a corroborating witness. Gregory Johnson, investigators knew, was never going to come clean, not on the word of a fellow con. That meant that the police would need to come up with a witness who could put Johnson inside Susan's residence on the day she was killed. It was then they learned of a woman who had dated Johnson around the time of Susan's murder. Back then, she had been a teenager, but now she was 50. A qualified nurse, a wife, and a mother living in Everett. Perhaps she had seen or heard something back then, something that could help their case. It was time to find out. The witness wasn't exactly surprised when Snohomish County detectives came knocking on her door in 2011. She had been expecting them, even hoping that they would show up. There was something that she had been carrying on her conscience for 3 decades, something she needed to get off her chest. So they changed this woman's name to protect her identity, but the name they gave her for this story is Vivian. So, according to Vivian, she had met Gregory Johnson in 1979, shortly after he had split from his wife. How old was he then? She was just 17 then, and her father had recently died, making her vulnerable, easy prey for a smooth talker like Johnson. At first, he was pleasant enough, charming even, but then things quickly changed once she moved in with him. She moved in with him at 17? Now he was suddenly violent and controlling, turning her against her family, isolating her from her friends. He even allowed his buddies to physically and sexually abuse her. What the actual fuck? Like, what? So far, Vivian had provided nothing earth-shattering to the detectives, nothing they didn't already know about their suspect, but that was about to change. Skipping ahead to the day of the murder, Vivian said that Johnson had told her to take a drive with him, saying that he was going to see a friend who owed him money and drugs. Since questioning anything he said might earn her a beating, she got into the car right away. Johnson then drove to the Alderwood Manor neighborhood, stopping in front of a house on Locust Way, and here he ordered her to come inside with him. The front door was unlocked when Johnson tried it. Why would you? I guess in 1979, maybe people left their doors unlocked. No. Entering the house, Johnson indicated for her to remain in the lounge while he set off down the hall, moving furtively. Remember, Susan was killed in the shower, or she was pulled from the shower. So when they walked in her house, she was in the fucking shower. A short while later, she heard sounds of a struggle and heard a woman cry out. Then it was quiet for a moment, and then the silence was broken by the distinctive sound of a gunshot. Every instinct in Vivian's body told her to flee at this point, to run from the house and just keep going until she was out of reach of Johnson. But Johnson had her so petrified by this time that she didn't run. Instead, she walked down the hall, heading in the same direction he had taken. And in the bathroom, she came upon a terrible scene. There was a naked woman on the floor, unmoving, bleeding from a head wound. And when he spotted Vivian, Johnson said, "This is what happens to people who fuck with my life." Remember, Susan had helped his wife get away from him. Yeah. So he then lifted the woman's head by the hair, held the gun just a few inches away, and fired another bullet into her brain. Wow. Vivian did not know the identity of the victim until she read about it later in the paper. It was Susan. So the question is right now, why didn't Vivian go to the police at that point, right? All those years ago. So the answer is twofold. On the one hand, Johnson had told her that she was an accomplice to murder and thus as guilty as he was under the law. And on the other hand, he threatened her family. He said, "You say anything and they all die." And she probably believed him. Vivian knew that he was serious. Even after she managed to escape him while he was serving the term for robbery, she remained terrified of him. The first thing he did after his release from prison was to track her down and reiterate his warning. He said, "Keep your mouth shut if you want to live. I know where to find you and your family." But now, 37 years later, because Jesus Christ, Vivian was ready to talk, to repeat her allegations in front of a jury, because Susan's family deserves justice. They deserve to know what happened and who did it. Confronted with Vivian's eyewitness statement, Johnson must have known that his time was up. So rather than take his chances in open court, he asked for a deal, agreeing to plead to second-degree murder. That saved him from the prospect of life without parole, but it still earned him a hefty jail time. He will serve a minimum of 24 years, remaining behind bars until his mid-70s at least. And given his criminal record, there is every chance that he will serve longer than that, every likelihood that he will die in prison. And it says the Queen of Hearts had come up trumps. So I'm always amazed at just all of the horrible, horrible stories that are in here that we read, and just the sheer amount of crime that is committed on a daily basis is just mind-boggling. It really, really is. So I do have my positive affirmation book right here. So let's read something to cleanse our brain, shall we? So today when I'm recording this, but I will read Friday the 17th is when you guys are going to see it. And this one is titled, "You Will Become Whole Once Again." Difficult times will come, but they will also pass, i.e. the arbitration. There is an end in sight. This will end at some point. You will fall apart sometimes because you are human. When those times come, grieve, cry, and feel whatever you feel for as long as you need to. And whenever you're ready, remind yourself that you will become whole once again, because you will. And even taking that a little bit further, don't let anyone, and I have said this to myself too, because I think we're all guilty of it. Don't let anyone tell you that your feelings are irrational or that you can't feel what you feel. However you're feeling in a moment, you're entitled to feel that way. A situation, I may not like it, but I'll deal with it, right? I don't have to like it. No, you don't. I don't have to. Yeah. I think I had told Bill that. I forget what we were talking about. And I was like, you're entitled to feel however you feel about something. Don't let anyone say, "Oh, you're being blah, blah, blah," or "You shouldn't feel that way." No, you feel however you feel. Eventually, it too will pass. Yeah. Okay, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that story. Not that it was enjoyable, but you know what I mean. And I hope you guys are all having a good day. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.